Yeah, like the beginning of Fab Academy with all these web design issues is not easy. And there are many approaches how to go with it. So one is just to go with a template. The other one is start from scratch randomly, or the other one is to explore HTML and what's going on under the hood. So this is what we did. But then at some point, you start to realize that you want your website to look good. And this is what we are gonna talk about today. So how we can use the existing technologies in order to make it look better. So you're gonna manage to make it look really good after actually spending some time with the technologies. But one particular technology that we're gonna talk about today is Bootstrap, which is a mobile first or sort of CSS and JavaScript framework, like a library that makes it easier for you to make websites with predefined CSS classes and JavaScript functionality. So in short, today I'm gonna talk a little bit about the background. Then I'm gonna cover where to get all the files that you need in order to start. And of course, the biggest part of today is gonna be a demonstration where we are going to basically build this website over here. So as you see, when you view it full, like full screen, or yeah, when you view it on a full display, then it's you can see that the menu here is nicely visible. So there are 2 columns. You can actually go with more. And then when you activate the responsive design mode, then you see that this hamburger menu appears. This is pretty much standard. This is very much what we all expect when we are opening a website with our mobile devices. And we're gonna learn how to do it today. So going back to the overview or the history of Bootstrap, let's start with the About Bootstrap page. So there you can find a little bit more information about what is Bootstrap and what is the team building it. So this is the current description of the team. There's a small team of developers. It's hosted on GitHub. And yeah, so it started out at Twitter as a templating system, so for all their internal projects. And then they hosted a hackathon, like a hack week. And it appeared that not just Twitter employees are excited about it, but also other people. And it seems that it's now almost 11 years old, 10 years old. And so yeah, it has undergone multiple versions, and it now stopped at version 5, which is still in beta. But when you open the Bootstrap website, so when you go on to the home page over here, then you will see that the current version is like the version that is recommended is basically the same beta version, so version 5. And this is what we are going to cover today. Not all of it, but just the parts that we need from it. So more information you can also find on this Wikipedia page. So there's a nice description about early beginnings with all the right names. So Mark Otto and Jacob Thornton. I was looking for, like a few weeks ago, I found a nice interview about Bootstrap and how the development of Bootstrap is picturing or showing the state of open source, that it's basically, okay, it started with Twitter, but it was not also a thing that they would be doing mostly during their day job time, but it would be more like an enthusiasm-driven project that they would be doing mostly on free time. And then I think, yeah, I don't know what's going on in their lives now, but basically the development and support of Bootstrap is there. It's the thing that they are doing outside of their normal work, and there is not much income coming from it. It's just that they love web design, and they love to collaborate with other people. And I think what gives a boost to these projects is when the developers of these projects realize that there are so many people all around the world who are getting excited about the thing that they made, and it automatically creates kind of a sense of responsibility. And basically, it's a good way to meet friends. I think open source is a really nice way to build relationships. Okay, that's that. How to get it? So you go to Bootstrap website, which is getbootstrap.com. You can also use any search engine, and when you type the first item is going to be the website, basically. Yeah, there is a link about how to get started and the download link. So let's click on the get started just to see what's in there. So the fastest way how to get it running is to use these HTML snippets, which are going to basically download the files from content delivery service. But that's not the best way, because imagine that you are on a ferry or on a plane and you want to work on your code. The internet is most likely not going to be available, and these things are not going to load. So here also you can copy this, but the best way is to actually download it. So compiled CSS and JS here. Let's save the file. Let's go here. So then once you download it, you can open up this zip file. And so the folder structure is such that in the CSS folder, you have all the CSS files that are needed. And in JS folder, you have all the JavaScript files. But so yeah, don't get confused. The only file from this bunch is only this one. And yeah, you can copy it or extract and paste it in the folder. So yeah, I'm going to start out with the Hugo website that we built in the last session, so on Friday last week. And basically, I'm going to use the static folder, make an assets folder for all the image and JavaScript and CSS assets in there, and basically put the minified file over here. And then the next file that you'll need is the Bootstrap Min Js. You could go also with bundle Min Js, but we are not going to use all the features that are dependent on this one. This is why we're going to take the most lightweight version of it, which is bootstrap.min.js. And we are going to put it in the assets.js folder over here. And I'm going to go to the root of the directory where I have the website project file. And I'm going to start up a terminal. And from the terminal, I'm going to start up Atom. Before we begin, I will try to explain it, do a little reminder about what we see here. So on the left side, that's the folder structure. You see that there's the hidden Git folder, which contains the history. Then for Hugo, content is the folder where we keep all the structure of the content of the website that we want to have. Then layouts is the folder where we keep the HTML layouts, partial templates, and shortcodes. that we're gonna reuse in different parts, different parts of the page. And then a static is basically static files that we, such as these Bootstrap, JavaScript, and CSS dependencies, and some images that we use in, let's say, all the pages of the website. So things that are basically repeating, that are not really content, but that are more related to the design of the website. So let's say icons or logos that we use in the layout templates. So let's say a header icon, and then like a smiley that we use for copyright, next to the copyright line, things like those, or like a background images. These we put also in the static folder. And then we have like the Git related files, like Git Ignore is a file where we can put in all kinds of file names that we do not want into our repository. On Mac systems, for example, one thing that I was always annoyed of was that the Git repository would include this file. So if you also do not know why it is there and that you don't want to clutter your Git repository with it, then just add it to the Git Ignore file. And then GitLab's CI, it's the description for the GitLab continuous integration system as covered. And there's the README file for the repository. And for Hugo, what is important is this config file. And let's start from there. Let's adjust it so that it fits the rest of the website, and we do not have to change it later. So for the title of the website, so it's usually kind of painful to figure out the right title for a website, but so the one that I used for my Fab Academy website when I was doing it in 2018 was or just simple Chris does Fab Academy. And I think I don't need a description here. What I need here is copyright. And I'm just going to add my name here. Then let's focus on the content next. And in the content directory, you see that there's this index.md file. And for some reason, it has this underscore before it. So there are a few things in Hugo which are hard to explain, but this is just the way how you make page information available to the home page. So there's separate templates. So there are templates for the home page, and then a separate template for each of the single pages. And this index.md contains the information or the content that you would like to use in the home page. And instead of about page, I'm just going to call it welcome, cat. I'm busy. So, and I will build the kind of the headers of the page around the kind of the title and lead text structure. So I'm going to have a lead text over here. So I'm going to use these two variables to describe the header of the page. Like so. And then here, I don't really need any content over here. So I just need these two variables to be accessible for my template. And then I built the structure in a way so that that each of the sections would be as a bundle. So basically, if I click on About page, so there's index page, which describes this index.md, which describes the text information and content, so the metadata and the content of the page. And then also it has assets. So for example, if I'm adding images, of course, like make sure that these images are optimized before you put them in the folder. They would be accessible by using relative addresses over here. So if I would like to add this me image, then I would just go about it as, I think it should load just like that.
Excuse me, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, because last week you only taught us use the index HTML file to be in the layout, to be our first page. But it should also be like in the index MD file in the content, right?
In the MD file, you should just put the content. So you need to kind of try to understand the concept of the separation between the visual side of the website or the HTML structure and the actual content. So the content is, let's say, if you perceive a page as a book or as an article, so that article, you should be able to transfer the text of the article also to your notebook. So let's say you would write only the text and you would add some drawings to your notebook. That's the content. And then you would use this content in order to put it in several different contexts. And website is one context. And so the layouts, so these are basically describing the HTML context. And then the content is basically where you put in the content, where you, let's say, if you prefer to write articles in a notebook, or you prefer to write them on your mobile phone, so you could just take that content and you could copy them in the markdown files here, and there would be less friction. So you wouldn't not need to add all the HTML markup around the content, because it would be done automatically by the Hugo framework.
Okay.
And another context could be that like a print. So you would use the LaTeX engine to convert it into an academic article, and so on. Then
in the layout file, the index.html file is still necessary or not? Because I guess we only need.
Now I'm just covering the content. So let's prepare this content, and then I'm gonna go to the layouts file. It's still needed. We're gonna use these markdown files, the content in these markdown files. So this one and also this one in the layout context. So we're gonna pull them in.
Okay.
So now I just basically want you to understand the structure of all this, more or less. And then for the assignments, I have subdirectories. And each of the subdirectories I call in the name of each specific assignment. So we started with project management. I'm not adding the numbers here, because each year I realized that the sequence or the scheduling of the different weeks, they actually change. And if you make a mistake, it's also gonna protect you from changing the numbers and the ordering after. So you'll be able to change it in one place instead of multiple places. So yeah, and here in the folder, so basically we have the same structure. So Hanno just joined. Okay. So yeah, and in each of these folders, you have the same structure. So there's an index.md file, which basically has a front meta where you can enter the title, and then also the lead text. And then here you would, let's say, so this would be translated into a paragraph of text. And then you can add code blocks. So let's say you have a snippet of code and you want to appear it as code, as in all the tutorial websites. So you can use these backticks. So in my computer, I can access it by using Alt group and then the single tick. So it's different. So there are these quotes, like single quotes, and there are double quotes, and then there are these backticks. So this is a sort of special symbol. So if you want to add something that looks like inline code, then you use single backticks on each side of the thing that you want to appear as code. So you'll see the effect later. And yeah, in the same way, principles and practices. So index. And then here I added thumbnails for just hypothetical thumbnails for each of the projects. Those we are going to use also on the front page. And I think like the final project page also here. Instead of description, I'm gonna rename it to lead. So yeah, remember about shortcodes. Maybe I'm gonna, hopefully I have a bit extra time to actually dive into those. But yeah, this is the shortcode that we did in one of the previous sessions. So okay, so I think we're done with preparing the content. So we can now close this and go over to layouts. So here. So this is the structure that we had previously. And what we are going to do is that we're gonna add a page title and combine it with the site title. So each of the pages in the website, they will have an individual page title. So for the home page is going to be welcome. For the about page is going to be about, and so on. And then they're going to be followed by the site title. I am going to get rid of these things for now. I'm going to build a new structure in a way. So basically, in order to replicate the structure that you saw earlier in the browser, I'm going to put the navigation bar first. Then I'm going to go with the header. And then I'm going to go with the main part and the footer. So this is where we are going to start. And yeah, a little bit more about the layouts. So this index.html, it's going to be a layout for just the home page. So when you open it up in your browser, so when you will enter the URL of your web page, so this is the page that's going to open. And the layout, like Hugo is going to combine the layout with the variables. So all kinds of data that we specify in the config.toml file. So in the config.toml, so all the variables that we define there, they can be accessed by using the site scope. And then all the variables that we are using in the content, so they are usually, so for each individual page, they are accessible through the prefix page or this page scope. And then the variables are separated by dots. And also, if there's a hierarchy of them, then there could be more dots. Then in the default folder, so yeah, as I told, it's quite hard to explain why there are these underscores, but it's just to start with, you just have to kind of learn this sort of syntax. Yeah, it's the Hugo basics, so to say. And in the default folder, so you will find the default, you should place the default layouts for individual pages of the sections that you're going to have, or the pages that you will have on the website. So this single HTML, it's a special name. You shouldn't name it differently. It really should be in the underscore default folder, and it has to be named as single.html, because whenever when Hugo is going to create the hierarchy of HTML files, so this single HTML template is going to be applied to each of the sections. So Hugo is going to take this single HTML and it's going to replace these variables with the information that is going to find in the index.md file. And then it's also going to take the name of this and it's going to basically rename the index.md to index.html in the about section. So it's going to create a folder and put the HTML file with all the variables in there. Also the pictures, of course. And then in the partials, so again, like back to the layouts folder, in the partials folder, we can keep all kinds of reusable snippets of HTML that we want to use in our code. So basically this nav, we are going to replace later with the navigation HTML. So for now, while building it, I'm just going to keep it in the context over here. But once it's ready, I'm just going to cut and paste it into the navigation HTML. And then in the shortcodes folder, you will keep, or you can keep the HTML snippets that you can then reuse in your markdown, in your content files. So partials you use in the template context, in the layouts, and then shortcodes you can use as snippets in the markdown context. It's because markdown doesn't sometimes have all the capabilities, and sometimes let's say markdown doesn't have, let's say, a special layout element that would put a picture side by side with text. You sometimes might want to have something special in terms of content. So how to describe the content visually and layout wise, and this is where you would then use shortcodes. So that's that. Let's start with let's go back to the index file and collapse this one and put this aside. And also what I'm going to do during development is that I'm going to run Hugo server so that I can monitor real time what's going on with the website. So at the moment it's empty. It's just the footer that is visible over here. So as you see, the navigation bar is empty, the header is empty, main is empty, footer is empty. And I am going to use Bootstrap documentation in order to guide myself and also to show you a little bit how to approach it, because Bootstrap is very rich of all kinds of things that you can reuse, of reusable blocks. And in order to understand them better, you just need to click on the relevant page and read a bit. And now, so in terms of navigation bar, I'm going to use one of the components that is described that is reusable. It's called the nav bar. And Bootstrap makes extensive use of the so-called CSS classes. In CSS, you would define them with a dot prefix, but in HTML, you would just use the part after the dot prefix. And there are always examples. You can basically copy those and start from there. So instead of copying, I'm going to do it line by line. So to be able also to explain what things mean here. So as you see, in order to kind of make use of the Bootstrap nav bar, we need to use classes. And these classes, oh, I forgot one thing. Yeah, these classes are defined in the CSS files CSS file that we actually added to the page structure. So I'm going to open up this here. And the static CSS, so there's the Bootstrap Min CSS. And before we actually can make use of these classes, we need to make sure that it's loaded. And in order to load this, we need to add the link tag to the head of the website. In the href attribute, we need to specify the path to it. So I'm going to use the site base URL over here and then go to assets and CSS. And you might wonder why min, because that's the minified version of the Bootstrap library. And it is a version where all the spaces and all kinds of white space characters are removed. So basically all this file is sort of one line, one long wide line, and it loads faster, and it's also easier for the browser to interpret. And another thing that we need to add is the JavaScript file. And usually, so it's the rule, unwritten rule of web design is that you put it at the end of the page, that you put it before the closing body tag. Since JavaScript files can be relatively large, so that's a way how you would optimize the loading performance. So you would load the CSS files in the head first. So the head loads before body. So anything that you reference in the head, it has to be loaded before the body actually starts to be interpreted. So it makes sense to keep the head short, and not really saturated with all kinds of files and references. And then JavaScript, it is okay to load JavaScript later, because then so it should be perceived as an extra interactivity layer on top of the website that you are building. And the way you load it is by using the script tag, and it has an attribute called source. And here, in the same way we did above, we use the base URL. Here I forgot the capital B. And that's that. Not just base URL, but also I need the full path. So assets, here it is. All right, now I can close this and go back to the navbar. Or also here. So a good way to check whether the browser can find all these references is to open the web developer web console. So there is one error, which is that the browser usually is trying to look for favicon.ico. So like a favicon that you can see here before the title of the page. So that's an extra thing, and I could cover it separately later. So yeah, but otherwise than that, it seems that it can find the CSS file and the JavaScript file. It doesn't complain, so we can close this down. And back to the nav bar. So let's try to build a simple one. We need to add a class, the general class. Then, so this class defines when the nav bar should expand. And in Bootstrap, there's the concept of breakpoints. So since it's a responsive engine library, then it has several breakpoints that let you configure your appearance of the website for multiple screen sizes. And LG means large, SM means small, and ND means medium. And breakpoints over here. So there's a full description, so you can find the description of what these descriptions are. So with Bootstrap 5, they also added XXL. And usually in the style descriptions in these classes, so whenever you have these used, then it means that the style will apply to anything that is larger or equal to this width in pixels. So the width in pixels, think of the viewport of the browser visible area width. And in this case, so here as an example, it is shown that it's LG. I'm going to use MD. So you can choose between dark and light themes of the navbar, and then you can choose also the background. I'm going to leave it as is. And you will also notice, I think you have noticed it already, that Bootstrap is heavy in terms of nested elements. Since it uses a lot of classes, so you don't want to, so these classes are not compatible with each other if you use them on the same element. So Bootstrap kind of expects you to nest elements within elements in order to make these classes work together with each other. And okay, so this is a semantic element, navigation. So what to put in it. And you see that here there's a class that is called container fluid. So there are two types of containers in Bootstrap. One is fluid, which basically makes content to fit all the page in all its width. and then a regular container, which is by default responsive. And instead of the container fluid, I'm going to use the regular one. And in a second, you will see how does it actually work. So, and then, so the recommended layout is usually to have kind of a brand. You can also see it as a home page. So because what we are going to add here is a link to the site base URL. And then after that, we're going to add a button that is going to, that's basically going to be the hamburger button, which is going to toggle the menu, the hamburger menu. So it has a lot of parts. So this is the line that I would actually prefer to copy and paste. And in order to make it a bit more clear for you, I'm going to separate it in lines. And there's certainly too many things to cover. So I'm going to explain some of them. So the type, so in HTML, so usually you can specify the type of some of the elements. So it's kind of seems obvious that the button tag is button, but it's still good to recommended to use this type attribute. And then since HTML5 became real, there's for each element you can add a data attribute. And then usually there's this dash separator, and from JavaScript you could actually access these variables. And this BS toggle is a variable that is used by Bootstrap internally in order to determine the type of toggling, so which is set to collapse. And then the target is going to specify the target of the collapse button. And I'm just going to call it navbar main. And these area things are accessibility controls. So I think they are a bit out of the scope of our discussion today, but these are important when you're building a serious website and you want it to be accessible for people with disabilities. But today I'm not going to cover those. So just to simplify things a little bit. And then in between the opening and closing tag, I'm going to add a special span HTML item. So this is so sort of a typeless or meaningless object for HTML. So general purpose object, if you are thinking of a general purpose inline element that you can then modify by using different classes or CSS styles. And in this case, we use this element as a placeholder for an icon. So what Bootstrap internally will do, it's going to apply the CSS style of the toggler icon to this otherwise blank element. So how about we take a look? Yeah, so now we have it. So we have the branding of the page, which is also as a link over here. And then we have this toggler icon, which doesn't do anything at the point. Then there's a way how to make it appear not as a link. So here I missed one thing, a class that is actually turning a link into a brand image, into a bit more something that looks like a logotype of a website. So here we go. And when I click on it, it's always going to lead me to the main page. Yeah, a little bit more about this class container. So look what is going to happen when I'm going to change this to fluid. So it's going to become fluid. So whenever I resize the website, so the elements are just going to expand to fit the whole width of the page. And then if I have it as container, then Bootstrap is going to use the breakpoints. So it's going to resize according to the breakpoints. So I think this is the XXL, and this is the large, this is the medium, and then the small, and so on. So it's really a matter of taste, but I prefer the container whenever possible. Okay, let's go back to the menu. So the meat of the menu. So after these buttons, so there's a div element, which has a identifier, and this identifier should match the identifier that we used in the databs targets or Bootstrap target variable over here. So let's start out with that. Just copy and paste. So sometimes when you're working on many nested element, it's kind of hard to identify which of the closing divs is referring to which opening div. Sometimes it makes sense to add a comment that this is going to be the closing tag of the container. Okay, and then within this collapse, navbar collapse div, so we're going to rename it to navbar main. I'm going to put an unordered list with several elements and give them classes. So this indicates that it's the actual navigation part of the nav. I think we can skip the rest of the parameters. These are not so important. So we are indicating that it's a navigation item. And here, I'm going to skip these area things. Nav item, and then within the nav item, I'm going to add a link. href, for now, I'm going to leave empty, or like a hash just means the same page where you are at the moment. And I'm not going to make use of the active keyword at the point. So this is going to be the about link. So actually right away, I could replace the href with something a bit more meaningful. So I'm just going to add this in another line, base URL. And yeah, add the about URL location over here. Should work like so. Let's see whether we actually can see it here. Yeah, so you see it's already working. And you click on about, and here it is, the about page. Let's do it with the rest of the menu items. So I'm going to have one that's called final project. And then I am going to have a submenu, a drop down within the menu with all the assignments. And in a similar fashion as I did when I was using plain HTML, assignments, then an unordered list, then an element, list element, and a link. And normally it's going to look just like a unstyled element, just like an unordered list with some basic Bootstrap styles. But the navigation bar structure, it has these classes that we can use. So for example, so the list element inside a menu, so we need to give this class nav item still to it. And we can specify that it's going to be a dropdown. So Bootstrap is going to apply all the necessary styles for a dropdown. And it seems that the text itself, so this assignments text, it has to be wrapped into a link. And we need to add a few things here. So here, yeah, I'm also not going to use the area tags. And for the ID, I'm going to change it to navbar assignments. And then for the nested unordered list, I'm going to specify a class drop-down menu. Yeah. And then for the list elements, I need to specify each of the A elements as drop-down items. No, yeah, exactly that. All right, let's see how it looks like. And you could also always add another CSS file on top of this to adjust some of the style elements. Maybe if, oh yeah, it's already quite a lot, so I'm not gonna manage to tell about that. But let's quickly finish this one. Let's add the other assignment over here. And in a similar fashion, you can add the rest of the assignments, like so. Now, let's make sure that we have a bit more space for the development of the header. So let's wrap this up and cut it and put it in the navigation partial. So we can replace this one. So you see, like, when you start out with plain HTML, this looks relatively simple, but then when you replace it with the framework, then it gets a little bit more tricky, but looks better in the browser. And then in the index HTML, yep, still works. Let's move on to the header. In the header, I just want to use a really simple approach. So there used to be an element called Jumbotron in Bootstrap, but in the new version, they removed it because there are quite a lot of ways how you can achieve the same effects. So basically, I'm just gonna use a heading and a lead class in order to provide some style for the text and for anything that we might need there. So let's start out with a simple h1 tag where we're gonna display the page title. And then a paragraph of text where we're gonna load in the lead text. So as you see, nothing special, pretty default. One thing that we can add is a style, a container style, so it matches up with the menu, and it does. And another thing is that we would like to add paddings on the top and the bottom. So in the old Bootstrap, in the Bootstrap number 4, there were no separate classes that would allow you to do that. So you would need to define that in your own custom CSS file. But now there are several classes that allow you to do so. So if you use p and then dash, and let's say 5, it's gonna give you the maximum padding possible around the content. You can also use py to target only the padding along the y-axis, or px in order to target the padding along the x-axis. And py is actually what we need. And then these values can be from 1 up to 5. And these values are relative to the so-called rem values, relative EM values. And these are based on the font size in pixels that you set in the HTML in the top level tag. So let's say if the font size defined in HTML on the top HTML level is 20 pixels, then 1 rem is going to be 20 pixels. And the PI1 is going to be 0.25 of that size. Yeah, I'm not going to dig into this. It's going to take too much time then. So yeah, but in our case, what we need is the PY5 in order to get this nice big space. And for the heading, I'm going to use a class. It's called display1, just to make it the biggest possible font size that is defined in Bootstrap. And for the P, for the paragraph, I'm going to add a class that's called lead, which is going to make the text bigger as it's the lead text. And that's the header. So in the main section here on the home page, we want to have a list of the assignments with pictures. And for that, we are going to also add container class over here. Or maybe I'm going to add it later just to see how the content changes. We're going to make use of the row and column structure of the grid in Bootstrap. So if we go to layout over here and we go to the grid section over here, so here you can find the overall description of how the grid works. So basically the responsive grid of Bootstrap is based on 12 columns that are just expanding or shrinking. And then in these columns, you can specify div elements which are occupying one or more up to 12 columns, depending on what kind of postfixes you use in this class structure. So SM is going to use the small display size breakpoint, and it's going to align. It's going to show this as a column only in screen sizes that are above the, let's say, 524. I don't remember exactly. So if you're going to shrink this down, it's going to show you these columns. Let's go a bit smaller. So it's going to put them under each other instead of next to each other. And then if you can specify multiple classes that specify how these columns should behave on different screen sizes. I highly suggest you to just after this, just open up the Bootstrap documentation website and read about these things carefully, especially about the grid. So we're gonna make a grid with 2 columns. So it's gonna be a 2-column grid whenever the screen size is bigger than the medium one, bigger than and equal than 728 pixels. And then whenever the screen size is less, it's gonna, all these elements are gonna just jump under each other. So there's gonna be only 1 column. So let's get started with this. So we need a div, so which is also like a generic non-specific element in HTML. So so if span is for inline elements, then div is more like for block elements on a website. So it's a nice starting point for like any kind of custom components that you might need on your website. And when we add a row class, like a Bootstrap row class to this div element, then it automatically visually becomes as a placeholder for, as a wrapper element for columns. Or I think I can just add col, and by using this grid system, what I can do, instead of specifying individually for each column, I could use this class, row. So I can use the row level to specify how many rows, how many columns per row I should have on mobile screen. So since it's a mobile first framework, then so the styles that you apply, so Bootstrap automatically thinks that, so basically you should start out with the mobile layout whenever you are designing. So that's going to be making your life much easier if you are building a serious website. And then you can, I think this was the correct sequence. So you can use these identifiers in order to specify what should be the number of columns. So whenever the screen size reaches a medium size. And here, inside this column, we're gonna put another div, and we're gonna make use of the card class. And if you go to components in the documentation, so here you can read all about cards. So you can have an image there, you can have a card title, some description and a button. And this is the basic syntax here. I'm gonna avoid the style. So basically, so this is bad. So if you're using any kind of, if you're using Bootstrap and then you're seriously building a website, avoid using inline styles. That's considered bad practice. And then we have an image. We're gonna give it a class. And for the source, we are going to use one of our assignment images, but we're going to start out with base URL. And then assignments. So for all assignments, in my case, I decided to use the same name of a thumbnail image, and it should be also the same size for each of those in this case. So you might also decide for another architecture. So if you're more into modifying your website. So if you have a good understanding of what's going on, then I would expect that you experiment a bit more and you add your own level of own layer of imagination to this, what I'm currently showing. And then after the image, I'm gonna add another div. This is like a crazy nesting madness, which I'm gonna call, which I'm gonna use together with the card body class. And in the card body, I will have a heading with a class. I'm using h5 here because I at this level, I don't know what level of headings would be in between. So this should be not the most important heading. So we start on the page, there should be only one h1 heading. And then for a subsection, we might use somewhere h2. And then h5 is kind of a safe bet at this point. If we are thinking about a hierarchy of a web page in a website. And after the title, I'm going to add a paragraph of text. And there's a class for that as well. And then we can add a link. And we can use a style from Bootstrap in order to appear as a button. So it's called btn. And I'm going to use the dark variant of the button. And as for the href, I'm going to use a link to the assignment page. Or view, yeah, just view. Let's take a look how this looks like. Yeah. So now it occupies the whole width. And that's because we didn't specify a container class here. And now we get it aligned to all the other content that we have. When we click on view, it's going to bring us to the project management page. And yeah, so this was one column. I'm just going to separate it with spaces over here. And here I'm going to use the thumbnail from Principles and Practices. If you explore Hugo in depth, then there are also ways how you can generate these kind of things automatically by reading the list of existing pages in a section and just applying this sort of a template to each of them. But that's like advanced Hugo. I should make another course on Hugo only. And then assignment 2. A good way how to simplify this is probably making this into a partial and then giving and then applying specific variables to each of these elements. But yeah, that's also like a separate thing. And so yeah, so there's assignment 2. And then when we make it wider, then we see that we have 2 columns here. And then once we go closer to the mobile size, we have one column. Now, so I'm not going to put this into a separate partial here because it's going to be an integral part of the home page anyways. So one thing that we might want here is a little space in between the footer and the actual main part. So now it's sort of not nicely distributed. And in order for that to work, so we can also, again, use the padding or margin classes. So if this py stands, like the letter P stands for padding, so which is more, so if you consider just a space between the border of the element inside towards the content, and then margin is the space that you can imagine as going outwards from that border. So both are fine. It really depends. Sometimes you really need to specifically decide which one is better. So I prefer to use the paddings because generally it has proven to, I have seen that they have, it is easier to work around all kinds of limitations of browsers. But yeah, and in order to add just the padding on the bottom side of a container in HTML, I can use the PB or padding bottom class. I'm just going to add the same amount of padding here. Let's automate the footer a little bit. So now we want the footer also to fit the rest of the width of the page. And I would like to automate this. So I'd like to reuse some site variables that I set up. So I want to use the copyright. And every time I recompile the page, I actually would like this year to change to whatever year is at the moment. And for that, I can use now.format. So now is a function in Hugo, which is going to give you time in seconds since this beginning of Unix, which is around 71, I think. And then format is an integral part. It's kind of a filter, which is going to take that input and it's going to convert it into a specific format. And in Go, you can use the year 2006 in order to tell this format function to convert it into the format of a year. And this is how it looks like. And I'm going to add padding, bottom padding of 2 here. Now, if we start to click around here and we go to the final project page, we see that it doesn't have any style and it cannot access the video. Also, about page is kind of plain. That's really what we like, what we would like. So in order to fix that, we should, no, wait, I didn't want to do this. We should copy all this. And in the layouts folder, we should go to the default folder and open the single HTML template and copy all of that here. And most of the things we can leave as they are. So the page title and site title combination that we can leave, so that's solid. The browser is going to be able to find the Bootstrap library, CSS library. The navigation partial is still there. We still want to use the header, but we want to replace the main part over here with content of the page. And as for the footer, yeah, we want the footer, so we can also convert it into something that is reusable. So header and footer, these could be good partials, but I'm just not going to do it now. And now with this done, we click on About, should load the About page. and the final project page. And each of the assignments, they should be. Yes, the last thing, let's just check what is going on with the final project. Why don't we have the video? Okay, so here it seems that the path is wrong, so I could just delete this and see if it works. Yeah, here we go. Did I forget something? I think not. So as a last thing, I would just like to stop the Hugo engine and see what are all the files that I changed. Add all of it and commit. That's it. Like I could, for example, show how to make, how to create more columns over here. So I could just go back into the source code over here and open the layouts part, open the index. And then here, when there's the main part and I'm starting out with a row for all my columns, instead of 1 column for the mobile size, I could specify 2. And here I could put 4. And let's see how does that look like. Now, yeah, you see, since I have only 2 projects, so there are only 2 columns, but if I would add 2 more, then they would line up. And then similarly, now when I scale down to the mobile size, so they just, they're lining up as 2. One more time, the source code. So this is what I changed.
Yeah, maybe you can talk about how to manage the picture size in the Markdown.
Oh, you shouldn't do it via Markdown. So you should. So if you use Bootstrap, then you can use the built-in classes in order to manage the image size.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go here to content and then to images, then you can use all these classes. So image fluid, an image thumbnail. You can even add rounded corners. Yeah, to kind of to make your images responsive or to fit to whatever size you need them to fit. And then in Markdown, so let's open up the content and the about index. So all you should do is this one. So it's different when you, for example, would like to have, let's say, a block where you have image on the left side and then a short description on the right side. So let me show you how to do it. So we'll need to add a new shortcode. Let's see. And it's going to be div. And we're going to make use of the Bootstrap row. And we're going to make 2 rows, 2 columns. And we're going to specify, in this case, so if you're taking into account that the grid system is 12 units wide, then the left part is going to be 4, and the right side is going to be 8. And in order to show them side by side, so these values, they should match up. And here, what we want to have is the image. And for the source, we are going to specify a variable. I hope I remembered this correctly. So it should get the attribute. And then here, I'm going to get the attribute. So these are backticks. It's important to use backticks over here. So make sure that you find either you find them on your keyboard if you want to use this feature. And here, I'm gonna just add a paragraph of text, basically, which also we are eventually going to replace with a description. And we're gonna add this description in between the opening and closing tag. And for the image, I'm going to add a class, not the thumbnail one, but I'm gonna insert the image fluid class there so that it fits to the whole width of the column. And let's try to make use of it in the about page over here. So instead of, I'm gonna just add it right above it. So it was like this. And here I can specify the source. And here I can specify the alt. And here I can specify the content that I want to show up. And let's see if it works. There's an error. Okay, that actually works. We right click and we inspect the element. Yeah, you'll see that it inserts here a row, the column, or an image, or the source is replaced with the source variable and alt is replaced with the alt variable. Right here, and there's the description. And when we shrink down to the mobile size, then it displays one after another. So, and yeah, the shortcodes in Hugo, they give you all the flexibility, so you can create your own markdown layouts, so markdown elements, basically. Just, yeah, I was a bit worried about whether this get is going to work. And I think, yeah, so this is the way how you get it, because like sometimes, like when you need to, or specifically when you need to put these values within the attributes of HTML, so you might end up, so you could also use double quotes like this instead of the backticks, but that would create a conflict. So if you're using the get templating function outside the attributes of HTML, then it's fine to use double quotes. But in this context, you need to use these backticks in order to access the variables that you're passing in via Markdown. So here, so it works almost like HTML. So actually, in order to make it even closer to it, we can skip these spaces. The only thing that you add here is these double curly brackets, like opening and closing ones. And I think you can manipulate the gutter in between them. Or for this row, I could add rather padding bottom. Yeah, in order to have some space, or margin. All right, so any more questions?
According to this question, like because you will have a short description under the picture, like as we do usually. And I realized that in the Markdown, we usually need to use the two space to change the, how to say, the sentence into another line. Is there any better way to just make them in order by themselves? For example, this is an image of me. This description, when it's getting longer, it's easy to go into the side, like really far away, and this looks really bad.
I think I don't completely understand. I mean, you can separate in between paragraphs by using a double, like a blank line.
Yeah.
But then, so you were talking about images. So could you maybe rephrase the part about image?
Oh yeah, no. It's not about an image. It's about the word, the description. So when we want to change the description into another row, we usually like type in the two space after our sentence to change it into another row in the Markdown, as I know.
Like this.
Yeah, like this. But it's kind of manually, and sometimes when you forget to do that, and because it needs to fit different size of the screen. For example, when we're in the web page, it's getting longer, but in the smartphone, it's getting shorter. It makes some problem. Like at here, your image is quite fit the screen, but the words, when it's the description is a bound of words, then it will have some problem. You got it now?
I still didn't understand. I mean, like the fact that the text is kind of, the line is breaking once you change the window size, it's sort of good. So you see this is now changing like this. The only problem I see here, so this picture over here, it's getting outside the window. So this is something that we would prefer not to happen. And in order to fix this, there are two ways. Either you specify the image width to be 100% in your own custom CSS file, or for this, actually, it would be better to have a separate image. Like we would need to create a shortcode where we can maybe add a bit more flexibility. So let's create a shortcode which is responsive. So image responsive, where we're gonna remove this clutter of rows and columns. And let's use the image class fluid here and the parameters. And instead of this me image, we could use basically image responsive shortcode. And add a source. Me image, because like this default markdown image is not going to add an alternative text, so it's just going to use the file name as the alternative text for the image. So we just get rid of this one. So here I think we can just use it without a closing tag, like so. Okay, and now yeah, it's going to fit the full width of the site, so it's not going to go outside. I'm still not sure whether this answers your question.
A second. Maybe I can somehow show my case by sharing my screen. Okay, so yeah, so definitely the script, like the picture is a problem, you just solved that. But somehow, sometimes when this kind of description getting too long, it's also not easily to read. And yeah, and most of the time I need to separate each sentence by I type into two space, but this problem will happen when I change the size of the web page.
Oh, okay. I see. I think you forgot one to add one meta tag in the index file. So let me share the screen. I'll show you.
Okay. Yeah, please.
So yeah, when you go to the index and you go to the head part of it, so here, you see there's the meta char set UTF-8, and then there's the meta name viewport, which is defining the viewport. Initial size. And
I do.
It should fit device with. You have it?
Yeah.
And then there was also initial, something like initial.
Yeah, I think it somehow works, but just when it comes to the web page, they will go like infinity to the end.
Maybe you could share the screen and show some code.
Yeah.
Or actually, I could open your repository.
I can share it, no problem. I guess you can see for now. So this is actually, yeah, I guess you can see it now. Actually, it's working like this. Oh, where is it? So actually in this part, it works quite well.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I just feel, okay, for example, when this picture getting closer, like a block only like this, and this word just like go infinity to the end of the here. It's not easily
so that's
to
because
read.
of the image. Yeah, I mean, like once you're gonna fix this, the issue with the image, the text is also not gonna expand, so it's gonna stay within.
So is this idea
page
similar to like I put in the container and the length of the sentence will expand or shrink according to the size of the container?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And with the images, yes, usually by default that they are kind of they are not responsive, so you have to kind of add these responsive classes, or at least you need to specify that the width of the image is 100%. So for example, if you would stay still with the plain HTML version of it, so let's say you're building it from scratch and you're referencing the source of the image over here and adding some alt text, then either through CSS or either through inline, so which is not recommended, but I'm just going to do it anyways. You can specify the width to be 100% and the height to be auto, so that it's going to respect the proportion of the image. So this is something that you could use in HTML code in order to make it fit to the width of the enclosing container. So if the body of the page is 100% of the width of the page, of the viewport, then now this image is gonna fit within it. But if you use Bootstrap and the image flexible class, as we did here, so image fluid, then it's just the style it's gonna apply these. So we can also go here and in the browser, when we click on inspect element, let's make it bigger. So you will see, so this image with image fluid applied. So here we can track what styles and what specific elements or attributes are being applied. So you see, you can even check what happens when you unselect those. So you see that in image fluid class, there are just two parameters that are being changed. So there's two variables, so max width of the image and then the height of the image. Yeah, so any more questions? All right, so good luck with the websites. And if you have questions, send me email or use the discussion forum. And otherwise, see you on Monday.
Yeah, see you on Monday. Thank you.
See you.
Bye.